session in this series of cultural dialogue. In this session, the cultural dialogue is between Malay Muslim and Japanese Shinto perspectives. The objectives of our cultural dialogue today are, number one, to explore Japanese and Malay cultural aspects and how the two civilizations grow in the future. Secondly, to create mutual understanding between two civilizations in the East, especially on how cultural and religious aspects intertwine with each other. And thirdly, to elaborate how Japanese and Malay cultures have influenced people's values, identity, attitude, and perspectives and prepare them for the future. We have with us today two honorable speakers, Prof. Takeshi Kimura from Tsukuba University, Japan, and Prof. Datuk Dr. Azizan Baharudin from Universiti Malaya and National Malaysia University, UKM. Before we begin, let me introduce our speakers. Professor Dr. Takeshi Kimura is a professor at the Faculty of Humanities and Social Sciences, Tsukuba University, Japan. He has been servicing Tsukuba University for more than 20 years. His research areas are religious studies, cultural anthropology, whereby you can search for his research using the keywords such as history of religions, anthropology, sustainability studies, and roboethics. Professor Kimura has been conducting numerous research projects, including millennial sustainable studies and mythological studies. Currently, he focuses the research on robotics and roboethics, sustainability studies, natural history of religion and religious traditions of Native North America. Professor Kimura graduated from Divinity School, University of Chicago, United States of America, for his PhD. Prior to PhD, he earned his master's from the Department of Liberal Education at International Christian University. Professor Kimura is a prolific writer who has published extensively in his field. Among his writings that put a lasting impression on me are Thinking from the Pandemic of New Coronavirus Infection and the Problem of the Science Council in Japan, Sexuality and Affection in the Time of Technological Innovation, Artificial Partners in the Japanese Context, The New World of Religion and Science, Imaginary Representation and Technological Present Fluctuation of Human Existence in Front of AI, Significance of Android Researchers Talking About Religion. Since his prime age, Prof. Kimura has been actively involved in the academic societies, including the Japanese Society of Cultural Anthropology, Japan Association of Synthetic Anthropology, the Japanese Association for the Study of Religion and Society, and American Anthropological Association. Our second speaker, Datuk Professor Dr. Azizan Baharudin, is currently holding the UKM YSD Samdabi Foundation Chair for Sustainability, as well as Director of Center for Civilisational Dialogue, University of Malaya. Prof. Azizan received her Bachelor of Science Honours in Biology from the University of Tasmania, Australia, Masters in Science, University College London, and PhD in Philosophy of Science, specializing in Science and Islam from University of Lancaster, United Kingdom. She specializes in several areas such as environmental ethics, religion and sustainable development, Islam and science bioethics, interfaith intercivilizational dialogue. She has published more than 200 books, book chapters, monographs, journal articles, and newspaper articles in the above-mentioned fields, including Harmony Between Religion and Science, an Islamic Perspective, Environmental Ethics in Islam, Environment, Values and the Future of Civilization. And she also has edited a book entitled Islam and Ecology, a Bestowed Trust. On the societal level, she is active in several governmental organizations and non-governmental organizations, NGO, connected with her areas of specialization, as well as being a member of various advisory and consultative committees for various ministries in Malaysia. Recently, she has been appointed by the Prime Minister as member of the Malaysia Anti-Corruption Commission 2020-2022. Before returning to UM, she was the Director General of IKIM, or Islamic Understanding Malaysia, since 2015 until in between 2015 until 31st of August 2021. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let's move on to the core of the program today. We are in the year of 2021. In other words, we are in the 21st year of the 21st century of the Gregorian calendar. Now, we have experienced so many things in human civilizations. We are now in the age of the new media, not only globalization age, new media, and we have some characteristics in our human development. So, but our focus today is only about the culture of the Japanese and also the Malays. To begin with, because this is a series of program, the first session in various series of program. I would like to start the question to Professor Kimura with the history of Japan. Could you please elaborate a little bit to us, introduce how did the society in Japan look like in the past? Because what we can see, what we know is just perhaps based on the media, on the TV, on the culture, the way Japanese speak, all are based on the TV and representation of the media. So how did the society look like, and did the religion have any influence on the society back then? Thank you. Please welcome. The floor is yours, Prof. Kimura.
Thank you very much, and thank you all for today's webinar. And I am very happy to be here. And let me share my slide just a moment. Okay, can you see? Okay, just a moment. All right, and I was given 3 questions, and I was given 15 minutes for each. And but for the first question, I might have a little bit of a long and presentation. So if I talk too much, please tell me to stop. Okay, so the question 1, and I rewrote that this way. And could you introduce the Japanese socio-religious culture in the past approximately 150 years since the Meiji Restoration in 1868? This is the time of modernization started. And so I will mainly lead the PowerPoint so that just a moment you can see and understand a little bit better. And to explain the first change, and and just a moment, what happened? Okay, there's 2 sections to explain this and last 150 years. First change is happened 1868. The second change took place at the end of World War II. So that I would divide the last 150 years into two parts. So then let me start with the first change. And to explain the first change, it's necessary to explain what had been in Japan before the first change, major restoration. Since we have a focus on religion for the question one, I will explain mainly history seen from this aspect. Since Buddhism was introduced from China to Japan in the 6th century, Buddhism has played a significant role. With its introduction to Japanese soil, local indigenous practices, worship of kami, a Japanese term for gods, began to be formed as a part of religious, Buddhist, and political complex. However, what emerged back then is quite different from what you see today as Shinto in Japan. Throughout the Japanese religious history, and Buddhism and the worship of kami developed complicated syncretic and hybrid relationships. The Buddhist temples were a significant part of the religious complex, where shrines for the worship of kami were relatively minor but important. As you see in Nara, in the ancient capital from the 6th to the 8th century, and in Kyoto, the late ancient and medieval capital from the mid-8th century until the mid-19th century, it is easy to notice there are many Buddhist temples. So these are the pictures from Nara. And in Nara, we have a huge statue of Buddha. And the left one is left top is the picture of Todaiji Temple. And the bottom, the left, is a picture of Buddha and Vajrayana and Buddha. And the right side is the temple, and also in temple complex in Nara. It is the part of and Yakshim medicine Buddhas and complex. Then this is a few pictures from Kyoto, and the right top is a golden pavilion, which is very famous. But this is made in not in ancient time. It's made in 14th century, maybe I forgot. But then the left one top is one of the big Zen temple, and that one is very famous one. And the bottom left one is the photo from the Inari Shrine. And this scene is very popular among visitors to Kyoto. So then, and it's worthwhile to note that from the late 12th century to the mid-19th century, a series of warrior samurai government controlled politics in Japan. And this is very important to understand the Japanese mindset or Japanese spirit. From the 7th century until the mid-19th century, Japan was a rather closed country with a few ports for trade. When European colonial powers spread their powers to Asia and the USA came to demand Japan to open its border, the internal political change took place from the feudal warrior government to what is called Meiji Restoration in 1868. It is called restoration because it attempted to restore the presumed theocratic state with emperor as the political center in the earlier days of Japanese history, which was accompanied by forced separation of Buddhism and Shinto. The many Buddhist temples were attacked and the statue of Buddha and the Bodhisattva were destroyed soon after the dismayed restoration. Then many Buddhist monks were forced to become ordinary men too. So for example, on the Mount Tsukuba near my university, today there is a Mount Tsukuba shrine, as the left photo shows. However, until the mid-9th century, there was a Buddhist temple complex there. So though in the late 9th century on, it became also the tourist site too. But anyway, so at the end of the 19th century, the huge change took place to the Japanese religious scene. On the other hand, the new government and the major government created the Shinto tradition as something indigenous with a modern idea of a pure ancient form and as a national state religion. Yet at the same time, Shinto as a state religion was not designated as a religion. So this is a little bit complicated story, but let me explain a bit and let me introduce the Japanese term shukyo for religion at this point. The term shukyo was originally a term used for Buddhism, but now back then in 19th century, mid-19th century was adopted as a translation of English term religion. When many Western terminology were introduced to Japan, they had to be translated from English to Japanese. So some new words were invented and some words from the past storage of term were adopted to translate a particular English term. And the shukyo is one of that kind of term. Before Meiji era, many local Shinto shrines had their views and ideas about the way of kami, and sometimes different views were competing against each other. Then the new government wanted to avoid any disruption and argument among Shinto priests, since the government attempted to make Shinto as a state religion and superior to any other competing religious view. While the Western notion of freedom of religion and the separation of religion and the state were introduced to Japan as a necessary standard of a civilized modern nation back then, so the government had to respond to these two requirements. Their solution was to make Shinto a non-religion without religious dogma, but political ideology and moral teaching, while government forbade Shinto priests to teach their own view, religious particular view. The view of Shinto as non-religion is still influencing even today. And the Shinto is nothing but religion. Then there were other groups of Shinto, and one is a group of new religions which were grouped together as a Shinto schools with the different religious origins and organizations, such as Kurozumi and the Tenri and the Konko, Omoto, and so on. And these are the founded new religions. And I wouldn't talk about this line of modern religious history in Japan, but this new religious movement is a very interesting phenomenon. And then the Buddhism found themselves challenged by the new historical situations and were forced to reform themselves to adjust their teachings and organization. During the Edo feudal period, the 13 Buddhist schools were fixed and functioned as important social institutions to support the feudal system, especially watching out for Christians. The major ones are Shingon School and the Tentai School, and these two originated in early and 8th century, 9th century. And the Pure Land School and Soto Zen and the Rinzai Zen School and the Nichiren School and others. And these are originated from 13th, 14th century. After the major restoration, those Buddhists lost their prestigious status given by the Edo feudal government and struggled to redefine themselves in modern Japan. And since Buddhism functioned traditionally as a protector of the state, these Buddhism continued to support the state policy, especially the military government, before and during the World War II. So when Japan became a more military totalitarian state, worship of emperor became the public policy. So and then I now switch to the second part. The second part began. At the end of World War II, in the 1945, Emperor publicly announced that he was no longer kami or God, but the human, and became the symbol of unity under the new constitution later. Soon after the World War II, GHQ, a general headquarters of the Allied powers, dismantled state Shinto, and the freedom of religion was reintroduced. The many new religious organizations flourished, and for a little while, and the Shrine Shinto remained low profile because they were associated with the pre-war Japan's totalitarian and military state. Yet since the 1970s, when the environmental concern emerged and became global issues, and Shinto reformed itself as a religion of nature, or religion of green religion or something. So many Japanese, but today if we ask many Japanese, are you religious or not? Many of them say that they are not religious. And many of them think they are non-religious today. And partly because many don't have a faith or belief in any religious teaching like Christianity. When Japanese think about the religion, they usually think about the Christianity or Western type of Christianity is kind of ideal prototype of the religion. And partly because the remnant of state Shinto as a non-religion. And because many Japanese still doing many religious practice, and they don't think they are doing anything religious. They think they are doing something traditional practice. And for example, did I have to finish?
Sure. Go ahead. I just have one minor question in between your explanation. Like,
if you have any questions, please, yeah.
When you explained about kami just now, the concept of God, it seems that when time passed, kami concept is no more popular among the Japanese. The popularity was taken away, maybe by the government. Is it so?
Well, that kami is just very popular, and the difference okay, let me tell you. There's one big change took place at the time of restoration, and before that time, each local area has its own local popular folk Shinto practice. And each local shrine has its own tradition and also its own religious discourse. But this Meiji government wants to impose nationwide ideology of a system of kami worship, which is based on ancient and text. One is called Kojiki. It's a kind of mythological, mythic stories. And the other one is a chronicle of Japanese history or something. So then, under this Meiji government, tried to unify the hierarchy of kami and God as a national ideology. And then after the World War II, and state Shinto was dismantled, but the people still practice in some way and associated with one place another, another one shrine another. And with that, and consciously knowing or acknowledging any specific meaning of name of kami at the shrine. So if I ask anybody who went to a shrine and pray, if I ask which god he or she prayed, often they don't know, and that's because there are many kamis, and one shrine has many god kami, and so for some many Japanese, and the meaning of or name of kami is not necessarily so important. But still they go and pray at the shrine and also go to the temple and offer prayer.
So can I say that kami was invented, or religion, Shinto was invented, or the government actually wants Shinto to play a very important role for the sake of controlling the people? Is that the case?
Oh, that is political aspect. That is political aspect. And of course, that besides the political aspect, there's many local people who had been practicing, and the Shinto worship of kami in many places, and sometimes that some big shrine, and in Nara or Kyoto has a long history back and to the 6th or 7th century, and that I'm talking about that it's modern, and change,
Okay, thank you very much.
And then since 1980s and the 1990s, and the new trend, popular trend, emerged, and that is it's partly influenced by TV, and TV or popular culture or something, and I will use the term spiritual, but a little bit different meaning. And in the Japanese TV and so-called spiritualist, that became very popular. And so then this spiritualist or those spiritualist type person, and say that all the shrine place or all the temple place is now they call it power spot.
Oh, all right.
Yeah. So then suddenly people started to visit the shrine and the temple and those religious places, locations, to look for some power or something.
Yeah.
So that since 1980s, 60s, and the 1990s, and many younger people began to visit, and that's so-called power spot in many places in Japan. And most places of a power spot actually are shrines. And the shrines and the temples, and so that then some strange thing happened, 1990s, and people don't think they are doing something religious. They think they are just visiting, power spot, But by visiting power spot, they think they feel they receive some power or something. For some, and they visit those power spot, receive some healing power or something. But they don't think they are doing something religious.
Okay, I think we move on to Professor Azizan.
Okay.
I have quite similar question. Could you please tell us about Malay society and how Islam contributes to their culture? Thank you.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Very good afternoon to everyone. Thank you, Dr. Alwani, our moderator for today. Firstly, on behalf of the UMCCD, once again, I would like to echo the welcome notes that our Deputy Director has extended to all of us. Thank you, Professor Kimura, for your presence here today, and also thank you so much to your students and friends in Japan, and also to all of our colleagues locally. Yeah, Dr. Wani, this is our first, I think, after a long time, kind of dialogue, and we'd like this to be the first of many such sessions. To begin with, I just want to make a small comment, which is, I think we have to be constantly aware that currently we need to be sensitive to perspectives. Yeah, so the center is especially celebrating diversity of perspectives and narratives, Professor Kimura. And I think what you presented to us is highly valuable. I think not many Malaysians have the opportunity to go and visit the Golden Temple, to go to Nara, and all those exquisite places. So inshallah, we will make the attempt, given the restrictions of the pandemic. We pray that one day everything will be fine and we can visit each other and make the cultural ties even stronger. Where we are coming from is that I think we are doing this exercise today because we'd like to celebrate also what was globally agreed upon. And I refer here to the Earth Charter. Specifically, I look at the preamble. If I may, Dr. Alwani, and I quote, the preamble says, "We stand at a critical moment in Earth's history, a time when humanity must choose its future. As the world becomes increasingly interdependent and fragile, the future at once holds great peril and great promise. And to move forward, we must recognize that in the midst of a magnificent diversity of cultures and life forms, we are one human family and one Earth community with a common destiny. And we need to go forth for a sustainable society, and towards this end, it is imperative that we, the peoples of the earth, peoples of Japan and Malaysia today, declare our responsibility to one another and to the greater community of life and to future generations. So these are lofty goals. And I think, inshallah, Dr. Alwani, I know with our first attempt today with Tsukuba University, we can further these discussions and mutual understandings today. And also to realize these aspirations, we must decide to live with a sense of universal responsibility, identifying ourselves with everyone, with our local communities. And we are at once citizens of different nations and one world in which the local and global are linked. So I hope today is a small manifestation of these lofty goals, inshallah. So we have to speak this way because these days this is the postmodern world. It is not even the modern world. The modern world is gone. And we need to demystify and clarify what is meant by postmodern world. And one of the meanings, I think, putting it very simply, is that people have groupings which are not necessarily following the groupings of the past. So I think, thankfully, we are very grateful, Prof. Kimura, with the questionings from Dr. Awani, have described how religion, Buddhism, Shintoism, the concept of the kami and all of that has taken and has taken what path in their evolutions. And then along the way, we spoke about government intervention or the government's role in moderating, quote unquote, how the people believe, how they worship, and all of that. So very good. And I think now it's our turn to speak about Malaysia. And I think when we speak about Malays, we totally have not forgotten. Certainly, we have not forgotten. This country is called Malaysia, and Malays are 60% of the population. Therefore, whichever way you look at it, firstly, this is one type of narrative regarding the Malays in the context of Malaysia, right? Secondly, this is one perspective of how Islam has influenced the Malays in this country. So we need to say all these things out loud, Prof. Kimura, because in this day and age where the technology enables any group, any individual to have the power to form their own opinion and to form their own way of looking at things. So we cannot stop that. So right up front, we need to say to each other, what is our goal here? Mutual responsibility towards each other, mutual respect for peace, means mutual respect for justice, not just between us human beings, but between human beings and nature, which is our primary home. No matter how clever, how geniuses we are at science and technology, if we don't take care of our natural home, then we've got nowhere else to go. And then it might just be the end of civilization. And by the way, dialogue of civilization, what is civilization of the future going to be, is very important now. It has taken on a very important meaning. So we thank our colleagues that has preceded us at the center, Dr. Alwani and Dr. Rosilawati, Prof. Kimura, who have done this initial dialogue, if you like, pre-dialogue. on today's occasion. So, okay, who are the Malays? And as always, like Professor Kimura has shown us, it is a serious topic. If you really want to know who the Malays are, when did they start to be an important element in human history, where did they come from, what were they before they were Muslims, all this is, I think, important if you really want to understand who and what the Malays are. Yeah, but today, as we said, we are couching it in the Malaysian context because we would like to be inclusive, because the Malays, 60% of the nation, inshallah, and they have impact on the others, the other major races, ethnicities in Malaysia. I think you know this. And of course, vice versa. So to begin with, maybe I'll spend a few minutes, there's so much interesting points to share. Even me as a so-called Malay, this is like rediscovering my identity, who am I, where did I come from, who are my ancestors. This is always beautiful. And I think this is important, especially for the new generation, as to whether they want to perpetuate what is inherited from the past. That's up to them. Yeah? They will have to look at the evidences and put the data on the table, and then they think for themselves. So at once we are talking about the past and the future. And I think the future had better be planned, had better be chosen, because we speak about futures now. There's a discipline of knowledge called futures studies. So you need to think what type of future that you want. And certainly what you want is a desired future and not a business as usual future. So what is business as usual future? We carry on what we have now, the old ways that didn't work, like Prof. Dr. Awani touched upon just now. No, we don't want that. So for me, today, this is a process of cultural literacy, enhancing cultural literacy. So first of all, sometimes people misunderstand that dialogue, when they put different ethnicities, different faith groups together, it's like they're equalizing. No, the word equal doesn't come to the picture at all. This is about getting to know each other. It is getting to know, to empathize. Yeah. So from what Prof. Kimura described just now, we understand many Japanese now, when they pray, and when people question them, which God are you praying to, they don't really know. That they're just practicing what traditional practices have been like. Yeah. So that is one interpretation of what's going on. So what I'm going to be describing about the Malays probably have certain of those issues as well. But then again, as we said right up front, for all the audience that are with us today, or the participants that have been so kind in allocating their time, Dr. Awani, to be with us, I think we need all of us now, right to begin with, to promise not to misunderstand anything. And if we have problems about anything that is being presented here, that they would discuss it with us, and let's have a dialogue. So the Malays actually are found throughout the Nusantara, or Malay archipelago area. And the Malay archipelago is the whole area covering the space between Asia, the continent of Asia, and Australia, between the Indian and Pacific Oceans. And the Western colonizers, colonial powers, called this area the East Indies. That is anything that lies, the area that lies to the east of the Indian Ocean. So if you look at the map of the area of Nusantara or Malay archipelago, mainly basically the South Asian regions, you can see that it covers 25,000 islands in an area spanning 2,870,000 square kilometers. Yeah? And the nations that are covered by this huge area that have Malay people inside them, they include nations of Indonesia, Philippines. Indonesia has 17,000 islands, Philippines has 7,000 islands, South Thailand, and Malaysia, of course. And the total population of all the nations in the Malay archipelago today comes up to 380 million. Yeah? So this is a substantial portion of the world's population. But yeah, then people will say, so what's so special about the Malays since they're everywhere? So that is the uniqueness of the Malays. Right to begin with, right from square one, they cover a lot of area, and they are a seafaring people. open to trade, open to trading routes, open to influences from the east, from the west. Yeah, many people would pass by and they would be used to diversity to begin with. So I think it is not too much to say, Dr. Awani, one of the features of the Malay people is that they are, in Malay we say dia tak jakun lah. I mean like they can open any, they can with open arms receive anyone. You know, of course those guests that they receive are non-threatening entities, of course. And then I think they are known for their hospitality. They are known for their creativity, in innovativeness and such like. And again, we don't have the time today to explain everything, but in Malaysia, okay, let's focus on Malaysia. In Malaysia, Malays, if you look at the statistics, is between 55 to 60% of the population, and Islam is their religion. In fact, in the constitution, it is defined a Malay is a Muslim, yeah. And in other words, the religion is play a central role in their lives. And Islam, according to some historical records, came to the Malay, came to this peninsula, to Malaysia, Malaysian area, in the 13th century. And what Islam did was it enhanced the quality of life of the Malays. So, what did they have a civilization before Islam came? Yes, they did. And again, if I describe this earlier civilization, pre-Islamic civilization, there'll be many interpretations, just like Professor Kimura gave some interpretation as to the evolution of Buddhism and other religions in Japan. So because we are in a situation where it is critical for Malaysian history at the moment to be absolutely very clear of its path forward, going forward, what would the Malays be like and what would be their position? This is a very much spoken about question at the moment. Yeah, so I will only limit myself to the cultural dimension. And the word culture in Malay is budaya. It's from two Sanskrit words, buddhi, which means the mind, daya, which means the force that makes the mind work or come into manifestation. So what Islam did was gave the Malay culture a learned kind of a scholarly outlook. Yeah, so learning and knowledge is given a very high status and value. In fact, the Quran, the first verse of the Quran, the first revelation received by the Prophet was to ask Muslims, to ask the Prophet to read. Yeah, to read in the name of the Creator, who teaches man by the pen. Of course, today we're talking about the doctor, the computer, of course, yeah, the digitalized form of the pen, of course, yeah, but still the concept of the pen, yeah, the written word, is a very strong element in the Islamic tradition, and people with knowledge are looked upon in no small ways, yeah, and these are the people who are rewarded in the dunya, in this world, and also in the next world. And this knowledge, interestingly enough, is not merely about the afterlife. It is interestingly enough, it begins with, it emphasizes, you must have knowledge about this world, first of all. Know your body, know your environment, know how your body works. Look at the sun, look at the rain, look at the water. Science says 70% of our body is water. This is described in the Quran. So for me to actually elaborate on and on, it will require a lot of time. But what is important today to be underscored is the fact that like in Japan also, I think there needs to be a revisiting, a relearning of the traditions of the religion. Yeah, a relearning, a reappreciation of what tradition and religions have to offer humankind. And I think in today's days and age, in this so-called postmodern era, there is this question of uncertainty, isn't it, Dr. Awani? We are uncertain. What is it that we should hang on to? What is it that we can afford to lose? What is it that we cannot afford to lose? What are the fundamentals that we cannot live without? Yeah. Already in the scientific tradition, people are talking about we are now technological giants, but we are moral midgets. And the advance of AI, artificial intelligence, have made people have increased fear. Yeah, people are afraid of the singularity. People are afraid that one day these artificial intelligences will rule us. Yeah, but luckily, experienced people like Jack Ma, the very famous entrepreneur, AI entrepreneur, he said that robots will never take over. Here, maybe Prof. Kimura, you can quarrel with me in the next in the next dialogue. Yeah, we are not afraid. We should not be afraid of robots, because robots cannot do certain things that are basically human only. It will be very difficult for the robot to be exactly like a human. So there are qualities of the human being, such as love, such as mercy, such as compassion, such as empathy, which maybe one day you can build into the computer or into the AI. But as of today, if we embrace, if we heighten once again those common human qualities that we have, and make it real and make it work, especially in this pandemic or later post-pandemic world. Yeah, already people are talking about, we cannot talk about wealth merely in terms of dollars and cents. There is greater wealth in the human spirit, in the human sense of entrepreneurship, creativity, innovativeness. We can help each other not just by giving each other money, right? We can help each other by giving help in many forms. So believe it or not, such values are actually entrenched in the religion of Islam. And Malay culture for the past, I spoke just now about 13th century. So how many centuries has it been now, Dr. Awani? 7, 8 centuries? Almost 1,000 years, maybe? 700 years plus. 700 years plus. Yeah? So they have been, benefiting, especially in terms of values, in terms of ways of doing things. We are the Malay culture, and this speaks for the other cultures also in Malaysia, we are highly hospitable. Hospitality ranks very high, friendliness, and we say this with humility, of course. Hardly any visitors come and they go away feeling that they have not received the best warmth and hospitality from Malaysians. But I would like to say, I would put in a big but. The modern technology, because of the freedom that is given to individuals, because everything is at the touch of your finger, right? I mean, you can say good things, bad things over the social media. And without this moral guidance, yeah, there is a big trend now that social media is being used for enhancing bad things, negative things like body shaming, right? Like putting forward false accusations, fake news. People are not talking about fake news or fake impressions. People are talking about deep fake. There is not a special branch of knowledge called, faking something very deeply,
Sorry for interrupting, Prof.
Yeah, okay. So putting it short, Malays, very important race in Malaysia, but that's not just in terms of quantity, in terms of quality. What we'd like to do, what we'd like to come out of this dialogue is that the Malays realize that there's something, just like in Japan, the Japanese must relook at their traditions and must choose to strengthen what elements, and what elements have been accrued along the way, which are not necessary, for example. So the word culture is very rich. There's inside their faith and religion, but there's also inside their behaviors that you can afford to change or make better. Thank you, Dr. Awani.
Thank you, Azizan. So in a nutshell, Malays actually are referring to majority of the people living in Malaysia and with a skin tone of like brownish, and with a bigger eyes as compared to the Chinese. And most, according to the Constitution of Malaysia, Malays are Muslims. Okay, so with that definition, move on to the second round. my question to Prof. Kimura, the impression that I have today as an outsider of Japanese society is that the Japanese culture observes the values of cleanliness, discipline, organization, and so on and so forth. But in the family, actually, how does the life, the social life, the family looks like? Do we have some values, certain values instilled in the families, Japanese families? How about the spirituality, most importantly? Is religion something central to the family life?
Okay, thank you very much for our second questions. And actually, I think I mistook the second question. And just a moment. And okay, again, let me see. Okay, and this is the second question. And so then, actually, that I found that the real question is that what is like in the family and the social life nowadays, and what are values instilled in Japanese family and their social life. And actually, I answered the first two sentences. So, but anyway, I tried to answer that and the question to you posed. Anyway, and okay, and then let me start with this, that and orderliness, and so that disciplined behavior of Japanese. I think that those who visit or those who watch some news or documentary or anything, you have seen this scenery, Japanese, and waiting in the line at the station. And the left one is this is and crossing in Shibuya, and a big crossing. And I don't know why many foreign visitors here are amazed by seeing this, people walk, pass by without, bumping into each other, and so that then, but anyway, so this, the left, the photo shows that big, crossing in Shibuya. But anyway, so that, as said, the Japanese, act, and in a disciplined manner, disciplined behavior, Japanese exhibit. And okay, then, so that, so maybe for Japanese and for both Japanese and the foreign visitors, I think that it's a very positive aspect of the Japanese, culture or big Japanese behavioral pattern. And so that it's okay in the public space, like at the station and on the road and public space. And of course, that the ordinary behavior pattern, and everybody, if everybody knows how to behave in certain way in a certain place, it's helpful. And but everything has a negative side and positive and negative side, So I will talk about a little bit the negative side today. And but anyway, before I talk about the negative side, and those disciplined and manner, disciplined behavior, it started at the early stage of education. And the grown-ups disciplinary behavior is rather the end result of many years in education. And the school education is a place where disciplined behavior or mannered behavior is highly valued. And any disorderly behavior is negatively valued. And so the left photo is just a picture of classroom at elementary school. I think it's just kind of ordinary classroom. And so those who are well adjusted to educational demand and socialized into the value system of school education, and which is definitely a mirror of social value, are well accepted in society when they are grown up. And the right picture is that this is the classroom from Egypt. And Egypt, and a few years ago, started adopt Japanese elementary and educational system. And the Fuure school was chosen as a kind of experimental, school, where Japanese in the elementary school education system, introduced. And I don't know how they are doing now. But anyway, so that those disciplined and and manner behavior and the collective manner and start actually earlier than this, the elementary school. It started earlier at the kindergarten and nursery school. So, however, that it has to be pointed out that a large number of children that refuse to go to school from elementary school to junior high school and high school in Japan these days. And I don't mean that those who refuse to go to school are not well mannered. I think they are the good and the kids, but simply they couldn't, well adjusted and socialized into a collective, kind of disciplined manner, And the average number of those who refuse to go to school at elementary school and junior high school is about 181 to 272 in 2018. So it's quite a huge number. So that they have a motivation to make friends and to want to study, but the school is not necessarily a right place for them because there are many different kind of children and that each children has a different, personality, different trait. But the school and the school educational system is, imposing certain, form of an expected, reaction from the student. And so then number of the suicide among those school children is about 300 a year. And from elementary school and junior high school, and bullying is also the big problem. And of course, bullying is a worldwide problem, not limited to Japan school. But still, bullying is, and the big problems. And there's many different reasons why certain kids bully other kids, And I want to do a little detour now, and comparative cultural department and develop educational collaboration with Ohio State University. And due to the COVID-19, our collaboration is now stalled. But before the COVID-19, we invited several faculty from a comparative culture department to the campus of University of Tsukuba. And 1 year, and Professor David Hong gave a lecture on ADHD and argued that ADHD was a socially constructed disease for designating behavioral pattern as abnormal, a certain behavioral pattern as abnormal, and not fitting with the demand of a capitalist labor workforce. And it was only in 1987 that the term ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, was established. And nowadays, this term ADHD became very popular. And so I think it's about 5 or 6 years ago, I think less than 10 years, suddenly ADHD became a widely common term in Japan. And any children who cannot sit still and who cannot focus on one thing or another, suddenly they were diagnosed. Those kids have an ADHD problem. So then nowadays we think that that some children suffer this problem, but they are not sick children or anything. Simply they cannot. It's not that their problem. Problem is imposing educational system, which demand or which try to change or transform and the children into a certain pattern and people. And then back to the Japanese educational system, I want to draw your attention to sports education. And sports education is highly regarded from elementary school and junior high school, especially the junior high school, the high school. And while many kinds of physical discipline by teacher or coach are prohibited, quite often it's implicitly accepted by both some teachers and the coaches and parents and even children. And these physical discipline have their origins in introducing the military style of discipline in the late 19th century. And the Ministry of Education back then, Ari Norimori, introduced education reform known for patriotism and introducing the military style of exercise. So the influence of military on the public education is seen in the school uniform. And in 1879, school uniform at the Gakushin School was made based on a marine uniform. And the left drawing is those, the marine uniform. And the right one is today's, school uniform, high school uniform for boy. So that it's clearly school uniform is designed under this, marine, and the uniform. And also this is not limited to boys' uniform. And the girls' uniform, and on the right side, of course, this is adapted from British style. And it was in Britain that the marine sailors' dress was adapted as a girls' dress, and later adapted the kind of uniform. And that the design was introduced to Japan as the girl uniform for girl student. So that why it is called sailor uniform. Girls' school uniform is called the sailor uniform. And of course, if it is written in katakana in Japanese, and nobody knows it has any association with marine soldiers uniform, but it is called the sailor uniform. And but I don't mean that today's educational system is based on any sense of military education. But yet, orderliness should not be just placed for that uniform behavioral pattern. And a group of young people are trained to behave uniformly according to order of their leader. And the photo of on the bottom of the right, this is some scene of some college student and performed some collective action, and this is very popular or very well known. And but these days, of course, the personal innovation is more important, and individual innovation is more important. But those who are trained, acting, behaving in a uniform way, and then always listen to the the order from the leader or top, and it's if that just common behavior pattern, just react to the one order from the top in a collective manner. That I don't think it's not a good idea. And if this scene is put in other than the scene like a military training setting, it's behave the same way. So anyway, I don't want to talk about that so much. And but anyway, for the second question of cleanliness, and as a scholar of religion, I inclined to say that the widespread cleanness originates from a religious notion of purity and cleanness. But yet I have to learn to refuse this kind of temptation. And in this modern and secular Japanese society, and the power of religious space is very limited. And the cleanliness of secular public space might be derived from a secular notion of cleanness and a well-designed urban space. And when the foreign visitor to Japan notes there are not so much garbage on the street, and then they regard it as a part of a cultural trade in Japan, but I don't know how much as if any cultures and the trait is influenced that kind of behavior, because when I was a kid, like there's lots of garbage on the street, and many older people and then spit it on the street. But then about I think the 30 years ago, and the people started to say, and the spitting on the street is dirty, stop doing that. So then people stopped doing that. And so then also then the last maybe 20 years, and then people started to say smoking is not good, bad. Then many smokers stop smoking on the street. They stop throwing the small cigarette away on the street. And then they started to carry an ashtray, and to throw their cigarette in the ashtray. So that I wouldn't say that there's no influence of the cultural notion of cleanness, but what we see today in Japan, that cleanness and on the street, on the public space, and maybe formed by by other some other and the influence. And of course, if you go to some shrine, and the shrine or Shinto shrine, they emphasize the cleanness and the space and the place. But and I talk about this issue a long time ago, about 20 years ago, something in Egypt, and I was visiting. I forgot the name of the university in Cairo, and then I was asked, how could religious space have influence, outside of the religious space? And then I thought, wait, maybe I should think about more about this issue. But anyway. But of course, if you go to that temple in Kyoto and the shrine in Kyoto, you will see clean space and the land. And anyway, then it is often said that at the school, from elementary school to high school, students learn to clean their classroom in Japan. Unlike janitors who clean the classroom in the USA, Japanese students learn to clean their classroom at the end of their day. And the space of a classroom is first of all a public space for students who learn to maintain it's clean. And thus cleaning is an integral part of their daily life. And but it doesn't mean that all the kids like cleaning. And then that.
Thank you very much for the explanation. In other words, the orderliness, cleanliness, the values of the Japanese culture actually come from the education system that it builds. Seems like the values are prominent, and still until today it's still prominent, yeah, Professor?
Yeah, I think so, yeah. And but another problem is a little bit too hyper,
Right.
demand the cleanness too much.
So as you said, there are negatives, there are positives in this situation. All right, so we move on to the next round. To the next question, okay. Would like to ask Prof. Azizan about, you mentioned just now that the Malays are better, the quality of the Malays are better when Islam comes and Islam has upgraded their lives. When we talk about Islamic civilization, in the past, it's actually different in the golden age. But today it seems that Islam is seen as negative at some light. In this sense, how can Malay Muslim or Malay culture help to improve this image today?
Thank you, Dr. Awani. We spoke just now of the value of knowledge or ilm in Islamic culture, in Malay culture. As to whether our report card is scoring in that category, we can talk about that, yeah. And we say this out loud, not in a negative with a negative connotation, but with a positive outlook. Like Alvin Toffler says, you know, the famous author Alvin Toffler, he says that the illiterates of the future are not those who cannot read and write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. Yeah. So again, we must emphasize that, because when Doctor speaks about the disparity, the gap between the image before and the Golden Age, by the way, this was in the 11th century Christian era in the Andalusia region, meaning Italy, Greeks, Portugal. This was the area that shone in those days. It was given the title Golden Age of Islam, because that's where science and the humanities and literature blossomed. And the history shows that scholars from all over the world, especially the West, congregated in Andalus, in all these various centers. So then what happened when the Golden Age ended around the 15th, 14th century? What happened between then and now? What happened? So again, as I said before, I will not be so bold as to give an interpretation that is conclusive today. As I said, scholars differ, but that's our job at the center, to be bridge makers of understanding, and finally seek for suitable solutions. Yeah. So if I can say today, if Muslims want to reverse the Islamophobic image, if you want to help with the issue of Islamophobia, why is it that people are thinking that Muslims are just the opposite of being civilized? That sounds a bit harsh, but that would be capturing some people's views of Islam and Muslims anyhow. So what I think they should do is going back to the spirit of being knowledgeable, being empirical whilst being spiritual. And there's a buzzword going around. We need a hybrid kind of knowledge, something that actually embraces science and technology and empiricism, but at the same time not losing values and morality, which we touched upon in the beginning. And I think Prof Kimura is not adverse to that idea. They should have a look at the latest goals called the Sustainable Development Goals, agreed upon by all the nations of the world, to be pursued henceforth. Yeah. And I think there's a deadline for this, 2030, if I'm not mistaken, and so on and so forth. There's 17 goals in that. We have to preserve the environment, water, air. We have to create justice. We have to bring poverty to zero level, etc., etc. Now, if you look at the fundamental values of Islam and Muslims and Malays, since we already mentioned just now that constitutionally in Malaysia, at least Malays are all Muslims. So why don't they look at the Maqasid Sharia, the objectives of the so-called religious laws, which is to sustain life, sustain the akal or the mind or reason, sustain lineage, your progeny, yeah, to sustain your belief, to sustain your, what else, Doctor? There's 5, and finally to sustain your economic means, your mal, your possessions. Without wealth, without physical wealth, you cannot live in this world. And if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it begins right at the bottom with needs for food and drink and shelter and so on until you reach the peak. So just by looking at Maslow's arguments, for example, the Sharia law, actually you can explain it in terms of the Sustainable Development Goals of today. So what am I saying here? What I'm saying is Muslims must show how their belief system is relevant to the needs of life, the realities of life, today and hence after. And I just want to be a busybody and say, Prof. Kimura seems to think that there are some negative aspects of some of the policies that Japanese people have been, adhering to very closely in the past. Yeah. So yeah, fine. Maybe the issue is you don't allow people to talk about things, isn't it, Prof? You should be engaging people. It should not just be top down. So that's why in Malaysia at the moment we want to celebrate the latest, the latest vision by the powers that be, which is Malaysia as a family, Malaysians as family members. So maybe in terms of the authorities wanting those that they govern to follow what they want to say, then they should have a system where there is dialogue going on. And again, it is our job here, Dr. Awani, to constantly define and refine what dialogue is and what should be the goal of it. So back to your question. So what can we do to improve this image? By being true to what we hold to be empirically verifiable principles of the belief system, principles of the culture that we embrace. Yeah. So I think this takes a lot of effort, and it does not just cover the environment. Linked, if you look at the sustainable crisis in the world today, it is social, it is environmental, it is economical. So in all these three dimensions are the most important elements of the modern world, of the world today. Can Muslims participate in those areas and show how their belief system, their values, okay? People are scared of the word religion. People are scared of the word belief. They'd rather just talk about what their values are. Fine. But if you look at the dictionary, values means belief. And futurists have done the analysis and the study that shows that a society the bedrock of a society, okay, physically is mortar, sand, water, and concrete. This is what elements are for building good buildings, right? But if you look at the social dimension, which is the other reality of life, you have all the institutions, educational, political, financial, okay, and all these are run based on what? On the values of integrity, the values of honesty, right? And all this, for you to uphold it, not taking corruption, for example, not being open to being corrupted, for example, what does it take? It needs you to have fundamental beliefs in yourselves, which you manifest in your behavior. So I think this is the crucial point. If Muslims are serious in overturning the image of Islamophobia, we just have to get into this kind of thinking and start the machine going. And along the process, you can ask friends of the earth who are because just now we spoke about the Earth Charter. The Earth Charter was a document drawn up, not mistaken, in the year 2012. More than 114 organizations and heads of states sat down to write that document. So we are talking here about a global document, yeah. And Islamophobia, it's one of a global issue, right? So again, when we talk this way, we are not denying, like in Malaysian context, where is the role of our non-Malay Muslim friends? Do they have a role? Yes, do they have a role? Because we mutually borrow from each other as well. Look at our foods. We didn't have time to go into foods. We didn't have time to go into language. We didn't have time to go into our capacity for enjoying each other's arts and crafts, for example. In the food area, I think we will need not one, but many sessions to just exchange our, what do you call it, rich heritage of foods. Yeah, maybe after this, Tsukuba and Universiti Malaya can indulge in a food dialogue, inshallah. So that's it. I think many things can be extracted from what I just said, but I just sort of crystallized it in those several ideas. Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you very much for the explanation. So Prof. Azizan has listed to us what should be done for the Malays to be better, for Islamophobia to be tackled by the Malays. Number one is to be knowledgeable. Number two is to have a hybrid kind of knowledge, which consists of the empirical knowledge and also morality aspect. Number three, to focus on the sustainable developmental goals, get involved into that as well, as the global world, global citizens are doing right now. Number four, look at the objectives of Sharia and try to attain the objectives of Sharia. And number five, it's be true to the principles and our belief system, principles of the belief system and our culture. And by doing those things, inshallah, we will be able to overcome that.
Doctor, if I can just add one sentence, was this possible? Was this experimented upon before? Yes, that was the recipe for success during the golden age. Even though at that time you wouldn't talk about hybrid knowledge, but what happened was the maqasid was emulated, the maqasid was elaborated, the maqasid was lived through, Thank you, Doctor.
And in fact, if I may add on, dialogue of civilizations really occurred, activated in that golden age. Because Muslims learn from other civilizations, like the Greek people and the Jews, and they also allow the peaceful coexistence. So this is one of the things that we cannot miss. All right, moving on to the next question, Prof. Kimura. Can we predict a little bit? Can we predict the future a little bit? Like Francis Fukuyama may have said that the future would be the end of history. But how would the future be in Japanese context, in the global context, based on your opinion, and based on also especially on your specialization in digital technology, robotics, and all this stuff? What is your comment? What is your ideas about that?
Thank you very much. Just a moment. This is just a moment. So this is the third and the last question they're giving to me, anyway, I wouldn't just let me move on to my slide. The last question is about the relationship between political system and the future of human civilization. I think, but I am not, since I'm not a social political scientist, I'm not able to talk about this question, answer the question. But rather, it's better for me to avoid it and choose to talk about something else. And the future of human civilization here means the future of global civilization, and not just a local civilization, because the contemporary and the future problems are not limited to any local area, but global. And all the nations and countries face and share the same problem. And I try to answer question 5 not by not directly responding to Fukuyama's idea, but by drawing attention to the present and the future conditions hanging up between environmental crisis and climate crisis and technological future. And the environmental crisis, climate crisis are already two well-known issues and not requiring any further explanation. Yes, environmental crisis seems worsening without seeing any good solutions. Since the publication of Our Common Future 1987, or even before, the present and the possible future climate crisis were, if not clearly, but vaguely predicted already. And from the notion of sustainable development to the current SDG, and the United Nations try to promote new ideas one after another, but we have not yet seen any positive practical effect of these series of these terms. At the end of COP26 last month, the Glasgow Climate Pact was reached. The countries agreed to try to keep a temperature rise within 1.5 Celsius, which according to scientists is required to prevent the climate catastrophe. But they cannot prevent ongoing climate and worsening and situation. And regarding impacts of the climate crisis and the environmental problem, it's possible to ask whether or not they would be threatening enough to transform any social systems from present forms to any better form or any worse form when biological and the natural base of being and existing on planet is deteriorating. And this is one side of what we will see in the coming future. While the climate crisis and the environmental problem keep on deepening and worsening, on the one hand, the technological innovations are seen on the other hand. Here, I mean mainly those AI-related technologies. I just limit these issues. And as we already know, and they are already applied artificial narrow intelligence working in many places, especially on the computer world. As a person who teaches and works at the university, and these days I rely on what the computer provides. And yet, strangely, some people still argue that it is important to check and verify that this information solid material forms of books and paper articles, which is impossible because this internet information are not yet reliable. And when I was a college student and then grad student in Japan and USA, I went to the library to check library cards, walked around in the library to look for a book I was looking for, then read it and take a note what I found important, necessary from the book. In 30 years, everything has changed. So in 30 years from now, what kind of change will take place? I don't know. You know, that's what the younger people will see. And then this is from Japan, and we have seen the latest technological development which had not been imagined only a few years ago. And in Japan, Orihime robot functions as a medium of avatar for disabled people who cannot move, but now work at the cafe. Those people who had to stay in a bed at home and far away can use this robot called Orihime as avatar, which works in the cafe in Tokyo. And this Orihime robot bring and prepared, cup of coffee or drink or some, cake or something from the kitchen to the table. And so that that person who is disabled cannot move, but that person can control that Orihime's movement. So then he can now serve at the cafeteria using this, Orihime robot as avatar. So that this and the new technology is now taking place. And in England, and the robot artist, Aida, and which was, and invented by a scholar at Oxford. And now that this AI Aida decides her own poem and draws artwork, she calls herself artist, robot artist. And Mr. Peter Scott Morgan, an ALS patient, chose to become a cyborg to survive and calling himself now human. And this technological innovation amazing, but probably soon will be a part of ordinary daily life. And left is a photo of Aida. That female robot is one who draws those the drawings, and she draws many kinds of drawings, painting. And then also she can recite new poem and out of, and store the knowledge. And she learned many, poems, and by using the machine learning, and she can create new, poems. And the right photo is Peter Morgan, and he said he is now human. And but now, like Orihime, and he now can use those technology to communicate and using avatar, and he can express his idea, his mind, through avatar and also through this and technology. And even though he cannot move, and he can now transcend the limit of physical biology who suffered the disease. So this technological progress cannot be stopped, but would proceed, and as if it is their own purpose, which human engineer would continue to serve to help realizing it. And the question is where these materials to make their parts are taken from. From the moon? No, not from the moon. And it's from Earth. So that the more this engineering technology become an inseparable and necessary part of social lives, the more natural resources and the raw materials are searched and sought out, and promoting more environmental exploitation. Oh, okay, then, and before I finish, so then, and I just mentioned two conditions, and and the environmental condition and the technological condition. And of course, that usually when we talk about civilization and the technology and technological development and aspect is very important and part to judge civilization or any culture. And this and the latest technology is will have a big impact on the human life and also human social life too. And but at the same time, this the natural environment and also and the climate crisis and those things, and the natural base and also biological base, of a human being is now probably a little bit, being threatened, thrown into a deteriorated, the conditions. So then, will we rely on more on technological progress to survive or maintain a human civilization, or we would just try to learn to use some AI scholars already started try to use AI technology to tackle with environmental problems, and so that then how we would go and between two kind of not extremely extreme and the conditions, but maybe for maybe some people will have a optimistic future and technological development and technological and progress. But maybe for some who see that Earth is a basic place for human to be a human, and we'll have we'll face more bleak, and the future. So then, in a sense, and the older generation has to think what the kind of a cost for future, we would leave for the the younger generation.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Prof. Kimura. So you've mentioned the environmental crisis in the future, predictably, and the technology advancement, whereby human, as of now, that is a case which is already called neo-human. Pros and cons are there, of course, but we hope for the best. So let's move to the last question for this session today. Prof. Azizan, In the scope of Malaysia, we imagine the current situation of Malaysia in all aspects, its social, political, economy, science, technology, environment, sustainability, and the rest. How do you imagine the future of human civilization with Malays, Malaysians, Muslims, globally in this perspective? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Alwani. I would like to quote Melanie Mitchell, who wrote a book called Artificial Intelligence, A Guide for Thinking Humans. Yeah. So among of the things she said was, historically, there are 3 types of approaches as far as AI in the future is concerned: data-based, logic-based, knowledge-based. So many predictions about the future of AI, artificial intelligence, have been based on extrapolations of historical technical developments. And little concern has been there's been little concern about differences between advanced forms of human learning and capabilities of association. See, these are technical lingo, like in that field, you'll be using these concepts, you'll be talking about these concepts. So for her, human learning actually requires many meta level competencies. Now the word meta itself is metaphysical. And we're not talking about airy-fairy meta here, this is technical meta level competencies. And guess what? Meta competencies include hikmah or wisdom, hidayah or intuition. These are all involved. So for humans, it is important to know what counts as knowledge, how to acquire it, create it, and learn it, and how to regulate cognition, attention, and emotion in the learning process, and what the social and practical motivation, which is niyat, intention, purpose, meaning for learning is. So at present, AI, artificial intelligence, lack most of these things. And then in 2018 at the World Forum, World Economic Forum, we mentioned Jack Ma just now. So he made this prediction: robots could replace 800 million jobs by 2030. If we do not change the way we teach our children, 30 years from now, we will be in trouble. So there's hope yet. We need to change the way we teach our children. So we should not teach our children to compete with machines. They are faster. Yeah, we have to teach something unique so that a machine can never catch up with us. And these are the soft skills, these are the human capacities. We need to be teaching our children values, believing, independent thinking, teamwork, care for others, empathy, among others. So these are the soft parts that AI knowledge, which even robots cannot learn or teach. So humans need to know who they are and how they will not be overcome by AI. So this is a critical point. Who are we? What are we? Yeah, you can have new humans, no problems. You can just have your brain and the rest of your body is all artificial. That's fine. Yeah, but what characterizes you as a human? So I think the future of civilization hangs on the answers to this question. What is a human? What does it mean to be human? Question of meaning is critical. Yeah. So back to the Andalusian period, the Golden Age, did Muslims know, for example, that Al-Jazari, who died in 1206, he is the father of robotics. In his kitab on machineries, he explained many types of contraptions, which today can be regarded as prototypes of today's robotics. So finally, I just now spoke about Melanie Mitchell, I spoke about Jack Ma, I spoke about what happened in history in the Islamic civilization. Islamic civilization is not against technology. They were at the front line of technology. They were at the frontier. So if they could do it, so it can still be repeated today. So I would worry less and do more and think more and feel more and love more and care more. This is what we're losing today, caring and feeling for the other. Empathy is a deficit. There's a book written by Professor Harry Lewis from Harvard University. He says there's a huge, the name of the book is Excellence Without a Soul, S-O-U-L. Yeah, so students are very excellent in what they're doing, but then they have become so competitive that they have lost empathy, and there is a kind of value deficit in the way that they are. So I think there's many things that we can do together, but let's not give up in, as I said right at the beginning, embracing once more our common humanity. Yeah, we need to go deep in ourselves and soul search ourselves and come together in a dialogue to explain to ourselves, yeah, what is the meaning of being human. Yeah, after we've discovered, then we can talk about how should we live, especially to maintain civilization of the future. Even if that civilization has more gadgets in it, has more, you know, more technology in it, so it's okay, no problems. Maybe we will be encountering, exploring, discovering even greater, more important things about the universe. Right now, it's just about the planet. How about going into those millions and trillions of galaxies out there? And the scientists are telling us that the universe is expanding. Now, what does that mean? People are talking about black holes. People are talking about multiverse. It's not just one universe, there are multiple universes. And if you look at the movies that they are online today, or you know, movies in general, there are many science fiction, sci-fi movies that actually speak about these possibilities. And you can read very subtly that a lot of people actually have given up in view of this environmental crisis. You know, some people have said that COP26 was a failure. So just wait for the 1.5 degrees centigrade increase and then everything will be, you know, and someone even said that the end will come in 2093, you know, and so on and so on. So let us ask ourselves, at this moment in time, we are breathing, right, and thinking, right? And what is the use of choosing negativity over positivity? Right now, if you choose to give up, you can choose to not drink and eat, and I think the next whatever number of hours, you just die, right? Do you want to choose that? Or do you want to choose looking around you, what is there that I can pick up, I can do good, you know? And for those of us who believe in a creator, who believe in the afterlife, who believe that there's a creator that is always with us, for the Muslims, you know, they have to understand who is the creator, what is the creator, what is their relation with the creator, how is the creator always with them. This is critical. Otherwise, why do you keep on persisting having a label, but the label does not have meaning? And the moment that label is provoked, you know, you go into a tantrum and then you create something which is not peaceful at all. And yet you claim that your faith system is promoting peace. So thank you so much for that question. It's a good question. We should always be asking it, but I would hang on to what Jack Ma says. We need to change the way we teach our children now, beginning now, yeah, so that in 30 years, we will not be in trouble. Is that how long it takes? It may be shorter because the AI is progressing so fast. You know, we are not jealous that our children are very, very competent in it. I find that's good. You know, we are also keeping up. But then again, let those gadgets be for the good, for the preservation of life, for the increase of wellness and happiness of not just us, but everyone. Muslims are very proud in Malaysia that talks about halal and tayyib. You know, and halal and tayyib means good, yeah. Basically, these two terms means good. Good, it creates health mentally and spiritually and everything. So to begin with, why can't we have that concept meant to be for everyone on the planet? So we want, do we want a halal car? Yes, halal in the sense that that car does not produce polluting materials that will cause a lung problem, that will cause tuberculosis. Would that be a halal car? I don't know. The scholars can talk about this. The so-called Islamic scholars or religious scholars can argue about this. Like when we say preserve the environment, we need money to preserve forests. Okay, there is a project in Sabah, in Borneo, where a few years back they promote. Let's say if you donate 15 ringgit, yeah, you'll be in effect helping them to conserve 1 square foot of forest, Malwa forest, right? So that is in conventional terms, right? But we have in Islam the concept of wakaf, right? So cannot that be the 15 ringgit and hence the 1 square foot of forest that you help to preserve be considered as wakaf? But of course, many of us will be able to afford more than just 15 ringgit, right? So that forest will be preserved for perpetuity. There'll be the animals there, there are the species of plants there, over 90% of our medicinal materials are from plants, from biodiversity, and that has been destroyed at a very fast rate. So what are we talking about here? Is this religious, is this theological narrative discourse? Yes, why not? The problem is we have been compartmentalizing knowledge. So religious knowledge, values knowledge, ethics knowledge, moral knowledge, you compartmentalize it. And then you speak about legal dimension, you speak about scientific dimension. So today also calls for the SDG, if you want to make it work, calls for a holistic kind of outlook. So inshallah, we will try, Dr. Wani, very humbly, Prof. Kimura and all our colleagues at Tsukuba, we will put our heads and hearts together and we'll move forward for a good future. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So it seems like the future actually needs our intrinsic values to be strengthened and to face all the challenges ahead. Well, we have questions actually. So this is the end of our discussion today. We have some questions. This question comes from Dr. Duria. Can I have a comment from both speakers on the trend of science being a religion of sort in Malaysia, in Japan? So science being a religion. What's the comment?
Dr. Prof. Kimura, you want to go first? You want to ask me to go first? Okay, just speaking in common parlance, speaking without actually have time to read it up or analyzing. Prof. Kimura, we base on what we know. Is science going to be a religion? Yes, if you make it to be a scientism. The problem now is, or in the past, I don't know, maybe 100 years or so, science has been hijacked by extreme capitalism. Science used to be for people, science to be for the good. If you look at Francis Bacon, the age of enlightenment in Europe, that time science was instrumental in creating the Renaissance in the West, for example. There was all the good intentions. Science was to reclaim paradigm lost. This is in the Christian theological thinking, right? But what has happened now? With the rise of extreme capitalism, right, it has been hijacked. Science is now big science, science with a capital S. And it is not a secret that all over the world, science is becoming a subject that is unpopular. Less and less students want to do science because they look at what science has been used for. First World War, Second World War, now impending Third World War, nuclear carnage, all kinds. And the increasing gap between rich and poor is because of extreme capitalism losing its thread, humanitarian thread, right? So is science going to be a religion of the future? Yes, if you allow it. But let us ask the question: who are scientists? This is a problem. We should look at the curriculum of scientists, of engineers, of lawyers, of everybody. The humanities must embrace some scientific knowledge and vice versa. The humanities need to be taught to the science people and vice versa. The historians, the poets, they have to know what's wrong with the planet. They have to understand what is climate change. They have to understand that they must stop using plastic because plastic is now choking the oceans, How are they responsible? Because they are consumers of plastics and things that pollute. So right now, like the Earth Charter says, we have to sit together and we have to keep calm and stop thinking about the negatives. Who is a psychologist here amongst us? So we need the psychologists now to come into the picture and tell us how we manage our heart, our emotions, our cognitive capacities. So everything must come together, inshallah. Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you very much, Prof. Takeshi, Prof. Kimura.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I agree with that. And that's what Professor said. And the science now began to be transformed a little bit into a tool of capitalists, and the endeavor. But in Japan, some and a group of scientists, they can maintain some independence. They are trying, but the government, try to change it a little bit by giving pressure, and so that now, especially that try to, use that the science as the to make it serve to economic, and activities. And so, but the question from that from the chart is, and the trend of science being a religion of thought. And I think that the science still in Japan, and professional scientists, I think they're maintaining science as a science. But there's some group of people, and they think that they began to mix science and religion and the spiritual aspect, and especially among the non-professional, and people, and the science and the religion and spirituality, they can go together quite often. And but I don't think that they would have a strong political, impact. But I think they still have some impact on some group of people. And because I think that partly is its cultural background, the Japanese cultural background, and science, and not necessarily in the Western sense of science. Science or knowledge, and also in Japan has a tradition, long tradition, sometimes coming from China, and the knowledge has some knowledge, some science, in other sense, and has some, spiritual religious base. So in that sense, and for some people, and the science and the religion can go, go together in hand in hand. But so-called modern scientists, they maintain, and their science, independent, and also try to, make sure that science independent from, political, pressure to nowadays.
Thank you, Prof. Kimura. Before I go to other comments, I would like to remind the participants who are still here to fill in the feedback form. The link is given at the chat box, so please please kindly fill in the feedback form for us to improve on our part. Okay, how about, Dr. Luria also said that this is her opinion. I feel that the strong practice of cleanliness in Japan is mainly because the community has managed to grasp the scientific basis of cleanliness and how it relates to health of an individual and also others. And then a message of thanks from Sister Azida Muhammad. Thanks, profs, for the insightful session. Are there dialogue cultural practices in the Japanese and Malay Muslim culture in the past that we have somehow lost but can be revived in order to encourage more holistic knowledge culture? A question. Yeah.
Yeah, if I can go first. Again, not having had the opportunity to really study the question. Maybe there are records of dialogues, quote unquote, taking place, but I think they are not like what we are talking about today. Because I think those days, they were just too busy following their way of life. Like what I understand in Japan, for example, the respect for nature is of the highest order. Some people, misunderstand that there's nature worship in Japan. Wallahu alam, I'm not a scholar in that area. But the dialogue is between human beings and nature, right? And for Muslims, the dialogue was between human beings and the creator and nature. I'm not denying here that there might be concepts of the creator in Japan. I'm not denying that. But whatever it is, thank you for the reminder. So if we discover that there were forms of dialogue before, let's revive it, right? If it's suitable today. And what is more critical is what are the forms of dialogue that are useful and critical today, and let's push those forward. But there are, inshallah, after this, the center will promote the ethics of dialogue, for example, the adab of dialogue. Yeah, when you find that your views are not exactly like the one you are dialoguing with, then what do you do? What's the way out? So those are things that that constitute the science of dialogue. Some people are surprised, the science of dialogue. Yeah, like it's a skill, but it's knowledge based. There's the adab. You see, adab is the basic word for peradaban, the basic word for civilization. There's a deep meaning for being civilized. What does it mean to be civilized? So before we speak about the future of civilizations, we have to come to terms, we have to agree on the definition of civilization, right? Otherwise, it's free for all. And that's one of the challenges. I wouldn't say problem, because again, I want to avoid, bombastic words that people will bombard me with. That would be the challenge for the future. How do we define things? What meaning we give to important concepts? Yeah. So, and then we have to agree to disagree. If we still, all of us want to still live on the same planet. So, yeah, so I think this is critical, and there's just no way out of this except to keep going lah. So we thank Dr. Zida, Associate Professor Dr. Zida, very, very much for that important question. And Dr. Zida actually is quite an expert herself vis-a-vis Japanese culture in terms of sustainability, in terms of managing the environment. So we hope that she would also input a lot in our future endeavors vis-a-vis the center's activities. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Any comment from you, Prof. Kimura?
Okay, thank you very much. And this session, this webinar is very exciting, and I learned a lot. And for the future dialogue and the civilization is, it's very tricky terms, and I'm not sure that we can reach only one definition of a civilization. And there's so many possibility, and for the the engineer, I think they see some version of civilization in a certain way, and some people maybe think different way, and but anyways, and the question is how to locate religious background in this dialogue. It's of course very important. And for since I'm a scholar of religion, I can handle this kind of aspect of the dialogue. But for the others who are not and the scholar of religion, who are not familiar with the religious knowledge and teaching, and maybe sometimes they have a difficulty having the civilizational dialogue with some religious aspect. And so especially the many Japanese the scientists and experts, and if we try to bring them into our dialogue, and I think sometimes it's better not to expect them to talk about something, some religious aspect, and so that especially as that the Japanese, they think they are not religious, so they want to avoid any religious talk. So especially if they are scientists, and so that is one issue probably, and maybe I think you have already an experience in communicating, talking with Japanese scientists.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. What I can conclude from our dialogue today is that we have defined Malays, and we have some exposure of the Japanese social culture. We also have looked at some of the current situation or the present situation of both Malays and also Japanese culture and societal aspects. And we have discussed, we have some ideas from our discussion about how the future will look like, what are the core elements or the core values which we have to stand on as a foundation of the future civilization. I thank you to all the participants who are here, and I thank you to Prof. Takeshi Kimura for being able to be with us today, and also Prof. Azizan Baharudin. And I really hope that in the future we will have some collaborations as well. With that message, I would like to end the session today with the saying of salam. Salam in Bahasa Malaysia, it's actually, the meaning is peace. Assalamualaikum, which means peace be upon you. Peace be upon you all. Okay, let's end our session. Bye. See you again.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
See you again. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much. Thank you for attention attending.
Thank you. Thank you to all the participants.
Yeah, thank you for all the participants. Thank you.
And us again. Yeah. Bye-bye.